Hi there, welcome to my EKO Beginner's Guide. If you're watching this right now, you might not know much about this game at all. If you're like me, you happen to stumble upon this game on the Nintendo eShop. To put it brief, EKO is one of the only true MMORPGs on the Switch with a heavy emphasis on gacha and cosplay items. On that note, this game is also originally a mobile game, with ports to the Switch and PS4. Mobile and Switch are cross-compatible, and PS4 is not, however. Now you might be wondering about me. I'm Momo and I've been playing this game for more than a year on and off. I am by no means an expert, but I am one of the only few Switch players in the English community who still plays, and I have always been quite passionate about getting people to play this game. I realize there is hardly any guides or information out there for English players, so I want to make this video to help anyone out, even if it's just one. Now if you're wondering if it's worth getting this game, the first few things you should know about this game is that it's completely free to play on mobile, so if you want to try it out, I suggest trying it out there first. Other things to know is that this game is Japanese based, meaning most of the English in this game is heavily broken and hard to understand. This should tell you that the quality of this game isn't going to be very high, so don't get your hopes up. This game does not get any major content updates anymore as it is over 13 years old at this point, but it does get some events and small content every now and then. There is also hardly any support for the English community of this game anymore, and its population is very small. This means trying to get things done and play with people without knowing Japanese is going to be very hard, and also means that you should not be expecting a meaningful story like a game like Final Fantasy. Thankfully, knowing some Japanese can help you get by if you're like me. This game also incentivizes microtransactions and is considered pay to win. This has in turn caused almost all of the Switch players to quit this game after trying it on sale, leaving the majority of the Switch player base to be Japanese and mobile veterans. None of these factors deterred me away, however, since I'm used to a lower quality game due to playing many MMOs in the late 2000s, but it can be a bit difficult to get by without paying real money. If you come into this game with that in mind, you may enjoy it enough to stick around and become an active player despite how much I've spoken down on this game so far. So what are the good parts of the game and what can I expect out of this game? To me, I consider the fact that it's one of the only MMOs you can play on a Switch, and it being centralized around cosplays and Japanese culture, to be fascinating as someone who considers himself to be a weeb. There's a satisfying element to being able to play as a class I like and strengthening my character, as it's reminiscent of old school MMORPGs. It also has some ways around for people who are more free to play such as myself, if you know what you're doing. As for what you will be doing on this game from a gameplay perspective, it's likely your daily gacha gem quests and a lot of farming. This game has a lot of farming to be done, and has a very steep progression that is not apparent to beginners, which often overwhelms people once they've gotten far enough. There is, however, a way to make it a whole lot easier that most new players don't know about that might help them stick around. With that being said, if you've gotten interested enough to try this game, here is where the guide begins. I would like to say that there's too much information to amass into one video, so I will only be covering the basics you might want to know if you're a new player. Some topics I will not be going in depth about in this video are farming spots, gear progression, money making, or farming skill levels. That will be for another video if there's enough interest for it. I should also mention that there's an unofficial EKO Discord server for the English community that includes other mobile games as well. Players here will more than likely be able to help you with any questions or things you need, so I recommend joining with the link in the description. Starting off, let's look at the main menu. I chose the mobile version since there's a My Page functionality that doesn't exist on Switch versions, and I highly recommend Switch users to download this game on their phones regardless. In pink is the server selection. If your device's region is set to anything other than Japan, you will have one English server and two Japanese servers. A third Japanese server is unlocked when you switch your device's region to Japan. In orange is the server's billboard, which doesn't get updated if you play in a foreign region, but still contains some older information if you wish to check it out. In red is the daily check-in rewards that reset after a month. In yellow is your login settings where you can modify your password and obtain your login key to transfer your account to another device. In green is the 8-hour search where you contain a small amount of rand, the in-game currency, a refinement ore used for strengthening gear, and a small chance added cosmetics. In black toggles the zone that you log into, with the Dragon Tower being a zone where you can access storage and potion shops, challenge towers, and is usually used for trading in any interactions. Lastly, in white is essentially your character profile, where you can see your friends list and view their profiles, look at past and current events, comments, the forum section, and more. On Switch, you are able to receive your in-game rewards through My Page. Note that on Switch devices, due to the limitations of Nintendo, social functions such as the forum are not accessible from there. The character creation is quite simple, so I won't be going over that. However, what you're probably interested in learning about is the classes. What you should know about the class system is that each base class has 2 unique unlockable classes, 3 shared dragon classes, and the choice between samurai and ninja, depending on the base class you choose. It is important to note that you can change between any class at any time, and that your unlockable classes are not exactly job advancements or stronger versions of your base class. It typically means your strengths become more generalized in an area. Here is a list of jobs in the unlockable classes, alongside a generalization of what each class does. Note that this doesn't mean that they aren't able to perform other roles. This is simply meant to give you a basic understanding of how they are played today. Starting off, we have Fighter, the standard melee DPS. It also unlocks Guardian, a tank, and Magic Knight, a utility debuffer. Thief is the agile DPS, utilizing a higher rate of attack, unlocking Assassin, a debuffer DPS, and Monk. Cleric is the support class, unlocking Bishop, being the main healer, and Monk, a burst DPS with healing spells. Wizard is the magic DPS, unlocking Warlock, a sustain-based DPS, and Magic Knight. The 3 dragon classes mentioned that were unlockable by all classes are Dragon Buster, Dragon Lancer, and Dragon Saber. They can be unlocked by quests in-game, in these locations showed in the images. Samurai and Ninja, however, get unlocked near the end of your story quest. Samurai is given to Fighter and Cleric bases, while Wizard and Thief get access to Ninja. You will be able to unlock your additional classes upon reaching Elrond Castle Town, which doesn't take long in your story quest. Here is where you can unlock it. So now you might be wondering, what class should I play? Assuming you aren't going to be spending a lot of money, the best recommendation I can give is the Fighter base for DPS and Cleric base for support. The reason is, Fighter is the best and most popular class there is, making finding gear much easier and requires less funding than the other damage classes to perform well. This game doesn't favor magic DPS unless you have a lot of money to spend. While the idea of playing a class like Wizard is often appealing to beginners, the cost of potions, necessity of very strong and very rare gears make it very hard to succeed long term, among other things. That being said, you're welcome to play as any class you like, and you can succeed on any choice as long as you know what you're doing and put the effort into it. As you start out, the game has a very basic tutorial that will help you get on track. You will mostly need to be completing out your story quest to progress through the game's content, so there's not much for me to say otherwise. However, there are some things that I wish people told me first, since it's not like this information is easy to find elsewhere. What you may notice upon progressing through the game briefly is unlocking the gacha menu, and I will warn you, do not roll for any gacha unless you have a base understanding of stats. You will be given a few free gacha tickets, and while you may be tempted into rolling for a gacha you like on the design, the stats of the cosplay are an integral part of any serious player trying to play the game. The beginner gacha that they advertise is quite a new chap with very poor stats on the cosplay. You are better off saving up your rolls for a gacha that has a beneficial stat for you. If you don't know what to roll for, please ask in the Discord server unless you don't mind spending a bit of extra money. The next thing you should know is to attune yourself to any of the teleport crystals that you find in red. These unlock your ability to warp to these locations later on, and are located in many of the major maps in the game, but not all of them. The game's interface is relatively easy to understand, but here's a simple rundown of what is on the screen. At the top left is the user menu. The top right is social functions such as the chat log, emotes list, and the ability to chat between different channels. An interesting note about fixed response is that it actually functions as the game's auto-translator, giving you a simple fixed response that will automatically translate to Japanese for those playing on a Japanese language. Note that it is not a fluent and accurate system, but it is there if you're in a pinch. The venture pad located on your screen is your quest log, and the gacha shop is for spending points or gacha gems on cosplays or items. Speaking of, don't buy any usable items from the gacha shop, it's not worth it. Lastly, the bottom contains your auto run button, interaction key, your items menu, and skills menu. Although you are likely to have many questions about skills and builds, I will not be going in depth about them since there is too much to cover and I only specialize in the cleric base. Since people often ask about how to unlock certain skills, and as there is already a video made by a fellow community member, I will instead link their video in the description below to cover those frequently asked questions. Not long into the game, you'll be introduced to the status build menu. From there, you'll probably be wondering what stats are. As far as stats go, there is a simple explanation on stats on the status build menu that you can look over, so I will only cover substats and how important each stat should be for you and the class you play instead. Here is the generalization of each stat and what they do. Simply put, strength influences your attack stat and damage while giving you resistance against critical attacks. Vitality influences your health and defense. Mind influences your MP and healing power. Intelligence influences your magical attack damage and MP. Agility influences your dodge rate, your defense, and also gives thieves a buff to their physical crit damage. Dexterity influences the accuracy of your attacks and their critical chance. Moving on to substats, I'll go into the important ones here. Physical crit / magical crit stats are an indicator of how likely you are to land a critical hit. Physical / magic crit multiplier influences how much damage a critical hit will do. The higher the number, the higher your damage will be. Cast speed influences how fast spells with the cast will be. The higher the number, the quicker you will cast. Now a general question that we get from beginners is what stat should I focus on? A general rule of thumb is to focus your main damage stat first, and add a bit of dex and vitality for your hit rate and survivability. There is no exact number for this, but for a recommendation, I would say about every level you should add 2 to 3 points into your main stat, and the rest split into your dex / vitality. This includes cleric base, as you are unlikely to be doing party content in the start of the game, and damage is more impactful for getting through the quests than being able to support your party. This also means having higher level attacking skills is generally more preferred, but don't ignore certain buffs / healing spells either. Don't worry though, as these changes are not permanent and you can change your stats and skills at any time. Moving on to cosplays, they are arguably the biggest factor in one's strengths and stats. A lot of new players who aren't aware of this roll for ones that are either bad or choose design over stats. I want to mention that there is a shop and events that give out cosmetic cosplays. The difference is that these cosplays do not influence stats and are used for the appearance section only, and not for equip slots. As mentioned before, the newcomers gacha, which is advertised to you upon further inspection, have poor stats despite actually coming from the gacha shop. Don't worry, the other weekly gachas don't have this, so you should roll for them here. Every 2 weeks, a new gacha gets released that focuses on 2 different stats. For example, one could be strength and mind, and another one could be physical crit multiplier and intelligence. In my personal opinion, you might want to avoid the gachas that have a high variety of cosplays to choose from, as you're more likely to get an item that you can't use due to the incompatible stats, such as the ones that are called best hits gacha. What's important to know is that gear will increase a stat and then decrease another. Typically, if you're looking at strength gear, it lowers mind or intelligence, but not both. This can be important for someone who plays cleric, for example, to prefer strength gear that lowers intelligence rather than mind, since mind is one of the main stats of the cleric base. It can also be helpful to roll for a gacha that has 2 stats that can help different jobs that you own, so you don't end up with an item that you can't use. For example, if I were a fighter base and there was a strength and vitality gacha, I could use the strength items on my fighter and the vitality items on my guardian. This means, if you're patient enough, it's actually more beneficial to wait for a gacha to release that has 2 beneficial stats that you need, rather than to roll for one that only has 1 stat that you can use. Gacha cosplay rarity has a minimum rarity of 6 stars, and the higher it is, the more rare and better the stats are. There is an important term called DX, which is the highest rarity of 10 stars. These have a high stat reward, but most importantly, all DXs are associated with a skill, often costing burst gauge, but give you benefits like a stat boost, a damage spell, or more, which can significantly alter a way a class is played. This is why some classes are DX reliant, such as wizards. The chance of getting said DXs are insanely rare, and you obtain them by collecting 10 silver stars, which have a low chance of appearing each time you roll, a golden star which has an even lower chance of appearing, which gives you 1 for free, or by hoping it appears by chance. As you will quickly find out, rolling for gacha can get pretty expensive, hence the push for microtransactions, but there are daily quests that you can do which give you a little over 100 gems per day, meaning if you do all dailies in a week, you can roll 2 times per week. The NPCs that give out the daily quests are listed here. Note that the difficulty of the quest does not correspond to the amount of gems you get, so I recommend going with the easiest difficulty. There are also events that they host from time to time which also give you more daily quests to do for more gems. So that leaves the burning question, what should I get? For a beginner, I recommend on boosting one's stats first. This means going for a gacha that has, for example, strength in mind, rather than one that focuses on crit multipliers. The last topic I want to go over in the beginner's guide is the events. When I refer to events, I'm not talking about the seasonal events they add, but rather the daily events being Defense War and the Dark King. When I was new, nobody told me about this or what these are. While as a complete beginner, none of these will be relevant for you. You're likely going to wonder what they are and encounter them eventually. Basically, Defense War is an event that occurs 4 times a day, and I've converted the Japanese time into Eastern time if you're from there like me. You choose a difficulty and load into an instance with other players where you're defending your barricade from being attacked. Your objective here is to destroy all the teleporters which will spawn mobs who attack the barricade, or keep your barricade alive until the time ends. Defense War is used as one of the ways for gear progression in the game, as it gives out rewards/drops that can eventually be turned into gear. Note that the majority of the players doing Defense War are doing it on the Japanese server if you wish to join, and they're most likely doing it on hard difficulty or higher. As for Dark King is an opportunity that you get once you fill up your chaos meter at the bottom left of your screen to challenge a mini-boss and earn summoning goods. Summon goods are spent in the gacha shop under the summon goods section, giving you lower tier cosplay and handy items such as speed boots. You can fill up your chaos gauge by killing mobs or walking around, and can be challenged with a party or by yourself. There are multiple types of bosses that appear each week. Each time you defeat it, the next time the chaos sphere fills, the boss will rise in level. At the higher levels, rare gear has a chance of dropping. When the time limit for the boss runs out for the period, the levels will reset and it will rotate between different types of enemies. This is another way of progression of making money. As for this guide, that will be all for this video. Thanks for watching till the end, and if you enjoyed or have any other questions, please comment below. It took a while for me to make, and I hope it helps someone out there. Hope to see you guys in another video or sometime soon.